a brand needs to be delivered consistently. And a lot of people, individuals, and their personal brand feel like, well, that's boxing me in. I want to be more things to people. I want to be the jack of all trades. Well, you can't if you're branding. Your branding means you're taking a more narrow, strategic focus to be able to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
Season 11 of CX in the Wild is live from across the world. From the buzzing streets of Tokyo to the creative pulse of Sao Paulo, we are on the ground, uncovering CX in its rawest form. This season, we're venturing into uncharted territory, exploring the edges of what's possible. So, let's begin.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to CX in the Wild. This is the last show I'm doing in the Dallas studio. I'm headed off to the 2025 World Tour already. But before we go, we're here with Jim. And Jim is an interesting person. His producers reached out to us to be on the podcast, and we normally don't accept these sorts of invitations. But Jim, we looked into your profile. We thought you'd be a great voice to share a different perspective on what's happening in the industry, to provide the audience with fresh ideas. Being a rebranding evangelist and a change architect, I think is so important on a number of levels. I'd love to get into it today. So thank you for being on the show. I like to start off all these shows with just tell us who you are and what's keeping you busy these days.
All right. So Jim Heininger. I run a firm in Chicago called Rebranding Experts. We've been doing work for about 12 years and then spun it off as the term Rebranding Experts about 5-6 years ago. And we focus on end-to-end rebranding efforts for organizations that want to go through that brand transformation to support their business strategies. And I would say what's keeping us going these days, we've been getting a lot of inquiries about what we think of the Jaguar rebranding, which got a lot of attention recently. So I'm happy to share some, our particular thoughts on that, because it's a little contrary to what other people are saying.
Really? Okay, so love that you're into rebranding. So, and let me ask you this. Do you think rebranding as a strategy or a mindset or practice, do you think it applies equally to personal rebranding as well as corporate rebranding, or do you think those two things are different?
They run a very similar path in terms of what you're seeking to accomplish and many of the steps, the tactics along the way. Certainly a corporate rebranding is a much more comprehensive, enterprise-wide kind of effort that needs to take place. But yeah, much of it is applicable to both.
Okay. And do you think they're both important, and how often should you do them?
Well, it's always driven by a need. So whether it's your own personal image brand is out of date, no longer relevant, needs refreshing, it's the same kind of things within a company, except a company tends to be needing, they're wanting to pursue new customer bases, new geographic areas, new products, new services, or perhaps they merged or were acquired and have some branding dynamics that they need to fix or straighten out. Those kind of dynamics tend to be a lot more challenging than an individual. An individual can pivot at any point in time. Corporation, it's a much bigger investment, much more comprehensive effort.
Fair enough. I think you're right to point out this scale there. I guess the reason I'm asking you this, because I don't normally have branding experts on our show, but I honestly see so many people online who they don't even address their personal brand. And I also think that there is a huge advantage for personal branding on the internet. And I think probably, if I'm being honest, half of the people who I speak to on this show or I encounter out in the wild, they ask me about personal branding. And because, we have built this global voice of CX brand. It's grown from 50 to 350,000 audience members in the last few years. And I'm asking you, just as a fellow adventurer in the world, and a branding expert, because I'm not a branding expert
Okay.
per se. And I feel like what I grapple with there is I don't think I really intentionally set out to build a personal brand. But I do focus a lot on, because I'm an advertising and marketing professional, I came up through the ranks and highly exposed to branding. I think I recognized the importance of, when you're communicating to an audience, to be distinctive, to have a recognizable position, to have a value that you're trying to stay true to. So those were all intrinsic in the way we evolved. So I think there was branding as a DNA component, but I never really set out to create a brand per se. But now looking back, I see just how valuable it has become and how important it is. So like, my son is going to New York. He needs to build a personal brand if he wants to survive in the next 25 years of the digital economy. But I just ask you, do you think much about this topic, or?
So branding is about differentiation. So building your personal brand is about what makes you different, what makes you unique, what makes your voice, your thoughts, your message, your perspective different than others. And so that's how people need to approach it, because let's face it, the world is filled with really smart, accomplished people in your space, whatever it may be. So how do you separate yourself out in your space? So what's interesting is, it takes, to build your personal brand, it takes some accomplishments too. So you can't start out saying, here's my brand. You have to start to get some accomplishments that represent that. And then it's easier to stand it up, because you've got evidence of your brand. And one of the things I would add to what you were saying is, a brand needs to be delivered consistently. And a lot of people, individuals in their personal brand, feel like, well, that's boxing me in. I want to be more things to people. I want to be the jack of all trades. Well, you can't if you're branding. Branding means you're taking a more narrow strategic focus to be able to differentiate yourself in the marketplace.
I'm already learning stuff. This is great. Well, Jim, thank you for humoring my questions, because it is something that's topical to me. And let's talk about you a little bit. What your voice is important. Your producer reached out. What is it that you're sharing with your audiences and with the world these days? You obviously have a message that you're taking forward.
Well, we believe that rebranding is a huge opportunity for kind of strategic growth, for strategic facilitator to your success, and that it is a much more comprehensive effort than what most people realize. It's really a chance to put a jetpack on your growth, on your future, but it needs to be very deliberately thought through, determined, messaged, and launched, and able to be successful. We see a lot of organizations out there that are, they're rebranding, and they obviously missed a key component in their customer understanding or in how the market was going to respond to it. And therefore, if they follow a much, kind of more disciplined methodology, they're going to be successful at it, and they're going to be able to use it to drive growth.
Yeah. And let's face it, the branding environment is much more competitive than it's ever been. Content, honestly, I think as we talk about this, personal brands are competing against corporate brands all the time for attention. And the seasons and the fashions and the trends change so often that if you don't have a sensitivity to your brand's role in the conversation, then you're probably missing out on a lot of opportunities, as you're pointing out. Which leads us to, since you did mention the Jaguar rebranding, what happened there, and what's your hot take?
So our view, objectively, looking at what's been done, is it's a bit of a masterclass in rebranding, to be quite honest with you. Now, why do we say that? First of all, a rebranding supports a strategic business change or pivot. And Jaguar clearly needed to do something dramatically different. Their sales were declining, their profits were shrinking, their market share was sinking. They needed to do something differently. And they needed, at this time when all the pressure is on the automotive market, to move into EV vehicles as well, too. So their business strategy was to do, to basically leave behind a lot of what had made them successful to that point in time, but lean into performance and design. And if you've seen the new car models, they're very futuristic looking, bold colors and so forth. That business pivot then needed to be supported by a rebranding that delivered the energy and the excitement and the futuristic view of what those new car models were going to be. A lot of people didn't like the look and the color and the feel. They didn't like the video. They didn't like the androgynous looking individuals that were in the promotional video that they used and so forth. But if you peel that back and you look at the business strategy and how the brand was supporting that, it was pretty smart. It was pretty dead on, because otherwise they were not going to be able to continue to exist in business for very long unless they embraced the future, unless they looked at a new customer base that was going to be more affluent, more urban, and really be able to go out and sell new EV vehicles to that market. So the reaction that we saw from a lot of armchair marketers was, this is crazy. Why aren't you even showing a car in your promotional video? And what's with these colors and so forth? Step back and look at it, and it was really a pretty smart business strategy and rebranding them to support it. It was pretty bold and different too, which is, I think, what a lot of people are responding to.
So I'll say a couple of things. The Jaguar, I did see some of the talk on the internet, and there was this correlation to the Budweiser thing.
The woke reaction, yeah.
Yeah, and there was this, I think that there was some who said that it was insensitive to their existing customers. And I guess that remains to be really
to be seen. Yeah.
And I do think that this whole conversation reminds me of what's happening to us. And I love I love this conversation, because I'm going to play this for my partner after this, because here's what happened. And I want to share take on it, because you just sort of talked about it in this Jaguar case study. We have an agency, and our agency, because we're opening an office, we just opened an office in Africa, and we're opening an office in Dubai. To your point, rebranding to take advantage of this change, I think, is an important opportunity for us. Mm-hmm. Our team did the designs. I sent it over to my partner, and she was like, I don't know, the colors are like a little way too bold, and the feeling of it is not really like the corporate enterprise level that like I want. It's like too whimsical, and it's not the sameness as like what our competitors are doing. And what I said was, I'm so glad you feel this way, because you're triggered by it. You identify it as foreign or alien or new or different. It doesn't feel exactly right. And I said, that trigger is exactly what I'm trying to instill, is we can own this. It is different. It's not the same. It's bold colors. And so I'm going to just say, Jim said, I'm doing the right thing. But isn't it really about triggering an emotion that you can own? And I think whether that emotion is good or bad has everything to do with how you back up the experience. And so one of the things that I often say on stage is people ask me about public speaking. How do you get up there and talk to all these in front of thousands of people? Don't you get stage fright? And I said, yes. But I learned this trick, which is the feeling of anxiety and stage fright is the same as excitement chemically in your body. Mm-hmm. And so if you just say, I'm not afraid, I'm not anxious, I'm excited to be here. And I noticed that a lot of people, when they walk out on stage, they say, hey guys, I'm so excited to be here today. And it triggers your mind into the confidence that it needs to perform.
It's energy.
It's energy. So this trigger that we're talking about in branding, once the trigger is there, it can either be anxiety or it can be an excitement, depending upon how Jaguar treats this or how their audience treats it. Is that right? Or
well, yeah. And if you in the Jaguar case, if you even looked at the quotes from Jaguar, leadership and you got to realize they're probably sitting around a table with piles of research that show that what the brand direction that they're going with is going to work with their desired customer audience. That it is going to be relevant. It is going to spark, conversation and so forth. So they're doing it from a point of confidence, and that they were trying to convey that in some of their media interviews is to say we can't hang on to the past, or we're not going to, it's not sustainable. We need to be in the future. People invest in the future, not the past, and they want, your brand always needs to be leaning into the future. It always needs to be appealing to new customers, to new markets. So it's in their case, I'm sure they had all the evidence that they needed to make these decisions. We just aren't sitting at the table to see all that data to be able to support it.
People invest in the future, not the past. Jim, that's going to be my quote of the week. That's going to be the title probably of this podcast. So I've been talking a lot. I want to hear your voice. What do you think is important for people to know about branding? What is the knowledge that you want to share?
Well, it's important that people, first of all, understand who they are and what they offer and why it's relevant to their customers and what's the future of that offering. So you can't look back. You got to look to the future. You have to look at how markets are changing, how things are evolving and so forth, and put yourself in that place in the future as you rebrand so that you have a new brand that's intriguing, but also relevant and is going to stand the test of time as well. We did a rebranding for a professional service organization. It previously went by the name of its founder, BPI. Those were his initials. And when the U.S. management team bought out the U.S. market from the French ownership, they wanted to rebrand. And they said that these initials are no longer relevant to us. We need our own unique brand. And it was their chance to go bold, much like Jaguar did. And we spent a lot of time understanding what it was that they do for their customers, which are CEOs and senior leadership of companies, and how they coach their talent. And came up with a couple words that kind of were intriguing to them, which were bravura, which is kind of means bold and confident, and avanti, which means to go forward, to take action. And merge those two words together to create a name called Bravanti. And it was their ability to say, we help organizations go courageously forward into the future. Boom, now they had a new name that just ignited internally this kind of spirit of what they do for their clients, got all their consultants, excited and engaged behind this new presentation of it. Then they too came up with a whole bold, refreshing look for that industry with pinks and oranges and all sorts of colors that supported something entirely different. And they did the exact same kind of move within their industry of separating themselves from the tired old, named by the founder kind of positionings, and a look and feel that was dramatically different, and business took off. and it enabled them to cross-sell in ways that they had never been able to in the past. They got, people that were kind of on the line considering hiring them, suddenly engaged and excited. So it was a perfect example of what rebranding can do for an organization, differentiating it out from the pack in terms of and supporting their growth efforts.
So yeah, there's the mental and strategic reasoning for rebranding. And, but corporations, it costs a lot of money. Like, how do you know when the juice is worth the squeeze on a rebrand?
That's good. Usually, and we will go through a process in the very beginning of what problem are we trying to solve. And it usually becomes obvious that the brand in its current form is a liability. It's dragging down growth for the organization. It's not letting it move into new markets or new customer segments or products or services or whatever, because the brand doesn't support it. And so it becomes clear that there's a cost to staying with the current brand, and that if you're going to be marketing anyway, so if you change up what you're marketing and you change up your organization, your client experience, every way that people experiencing you and so forth, that it will have a return on benefits. And the research that's been done out there, Forrester's done several studies of leaders who rebranded their organization, and 80 plus, always agree that it delivered on the return on investment and made business easier because it allowed them to grow.
But on the change management part, we literally sit inside organizations all day long. And if they've been successful as a brand, all we hear across the entire organization is brand guidelines, stick to our brand. This is our brand. We have to keep focused on the brand. So when you come in and you say, yeah, your brand, no, it's got to be different. That's got to be jarring for at least some stalwarts in the organization.
Yeah, and usually there's been someone who's led the charge internally to consider a rebranding. It's the CEO or it's a senior executive who says, we need to start having discussions about this. And they start to have evidence, data, that it's something that they need to consider. So people, you're going to have your stalwarts who say we need to be consistent in our branding, which is you need to, but the brand that you're trying to support may not give you the elasticity that you need to move into new markets, to offer new products or services. And so you have a brand decision that you need to make. And then that's where you say, do we just refresh the brand and, do a new visual look and feel to it, new colors, new logos? Do we reposition the brand? Do we look at kind of representing ourselves in a way that we are trying to reach this broader new market opportunity? Or do we need to change everything about our brand in terms of name, customer experience, mission, vision, values, all those kind of things, and able to achieve what you need to?
I see what you're saying there. So, I was thinking rebranding is just like all or nothing, but you're right. Rebranding can be an extension of the brand. Maybe it's a new feature, aspect, tone, voice for the brand that aligns to a go-to-market. It could be a complete overhaul, repositioning of the brand. So I see what you're saying is it's really brand evolution that you're talking about. It's the alignment of the soul of a company to its audience.
Yeah. What's our promise to that audience? And if that promise is dramatically different than what it's been in the past, then you need a brand that's going to deliver upon that.
Yeah. Audiences are so fickle these days. Their attention goes everywhere all day long. And I always feel like everywhere, everyone is getting access to something newer and better. How do brands even survive the amount of evolutional change that needs to take place? I mean, it's so fast and so demanding these days. How do you think about that?
Well, and it's always be careful the shiny nickel, that it may not be the better solution. It just may look interesting and attractive at this point in time. But if the delivery of it, the solution isn't there, Don't be caught by the shininess of it.
Yeah, but isn't the shiny object syndrome, isn't it like the axiom of online communication? Like everyone, and let's be honest, these children today have AI design platforms, capabilities, stock libraries, design resources. I'm amazed. My son is just graduated from college, going to New York to start his advertising and marketing career. And this guy has a suite of tools from analytics to design and so many tutorials online that he's like a one-man agency from the 90s. And he can produce whatever he wants at will. Our daughter also is in college for advertising and marketing, and she's more of the creative, but she literally can produce like a full brand campaign for herself, and it's like instinctual for her. And if I'm being really respective, the whole global voice of CX was the brainchild of our daughter when she was 14 years old. She was like, that's not how you do it. Go this direction, do this.
Wow.
So how do we, as older sort of marketers, how do we compete with that?
Well, I think, we've always had tools in the past, so whatever the tools help you produce, it still needs some brain power and review of it to determine is this strategically the right choice. So we're always going to have need for our brains in this, and a younger person with tools, without experience, without insights, can produce a lot of things, but it might not hit the mark because of what experience has shown you, is the target to start with that you're aiming for, and that is going to be a proven result. So, we're always going to have room for our brains in this whole process.
Thank you, because the one thing that I do have over these children is the fear of not making revenue for clients with their brands. It's you have to be more than just pretty, I think.
Yeah.
So Jaguar is pretty. They've obviously invested in the future. The jury's still out on it, whether it's a cost to their existing customer base.
Yeah. And I would add, there's probably evidence that their current customer base was not going to be buying many more cars. And so it's a new customer set that they needed to identify. And if you look at the designs, it's much more urban, modern, speaking to that affluent, more design conscious kind of customer, not somebody who's buying on heritage.
So, wow, you're right. It is. You're a little bit of controversial hot take. So I'm going to agree with you. What a stark reality for a Jaguar to be in, to say, we love our heritage and we love our customers, and our company was built on their purchases, but they're also not going to buy from us again. That's got to be a really painful position to be in for a company with such a heritage. And the choice, to your point, so you're really driving home a truth, which is a brand is made for the people who will support it. And that's a revenue driver. And going to the future, to this new customer base, what I find interesting about the Jaguar execution is it's also, they have this androgynous sort of postmodern approach to things. And what I find very interesting about postmodernism as a creative execution is postmodernism was really an art movement about being no races and no genders. The future is in those connotations was all about the story and not about the people. And so it's really like you look at you look at a lot of sci-fi that's coming out of Europe right now, it's postmodernistic. Your mind doesn't even see the races of all the characters. Whereas I think in the US, we're like, oh, there's the black person, there's the white person, there's the Asian person. And they keep adding all these characters because it's focused on these little nuance, these gender relevant moments. But when you get really to true postmodernistic art, it is your mind doesn't even consider any of that. It stays focused on the lesson or the story.
That's the kind of creative inspiration for them.
Yeah. So I think their postmodernistic approach, while triggered a lot of people on either side, if it plays out, they have the courage to play it out as postmodernistic art, then what will happen is the brand will become resonant across everyone without this gender, race, all these political traps. If they can stay the course, they'll navigate to a higher dimension, sci-fi reference. And I think the other part of it is it doesn't have to alienate their existing customers. It's the boldness, to your point. If it triggered people, great, because there's conversation about it, so it makes them relevant in the search engines. And if they can successfully communicate with their existing buyers and bring them along in the story, then they win.
Yeah, exactly.
So what a great
we got it all solved.
So yeah. So what else? What's the new hotness for in your opinion, your niche? Doesn't have to solve the world's hot take problems, but in your opinion, what are you focused on in 2025 that's going to make a difference to you, your business, your clients, the industry? What's important?
So I've got a couple thoughts actually. So I think kind of as a follow through to the Jaguar discussion is how you manage the social media launch of your rebrand, of your new brand, is increasingly important. Because you have to be bold, you have to be distinctive to capture attention within that environment. But you have to know that you're also you're going to attract controversy. You're going to attract, critique of it. And you really have to, put your armor on and ignore the noise. You need to communicate, to your customers. You need to communicate what your strategic vision is, what's different about your brand going forward, the exciting opportunities of the future, how it affects your customers and so forth. But put your armor on, because everybody loves to be a critic these days. And so expect it, keep focused. Those people aren't your customer. Like in the Jaguar's case, all the people that were grousing about it were not customers of Jaguar. We're never going to be able to afford a Jaguar, but they could afford to go out and blow their opinion on it, across the internet. Don't worry about them. Focus on the people who are going to buy your cars.
Controversial take. Identify everybody who hates on your brand and put them in their CRM as don't contact these people ever again. So what you're saying is really important these days. No good brand goes unpunished. The internet is full of haters and it thrives on controversy. So there is no winning with half of the audience. Mark Karches was the first guy I ever had on my podcast. And the reason I had him on is he said, you want to have great customer experiences? Stop making customers happy. You can't make everyone happy. You only can invest in the relationships that want to invest in you. And no time has been more evident of that than now on the internet.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, here's just sharing colleague to colleague. I recognized what you're saying. We opened an office And what we do is we have community managers that do outbound customer care, if you will, which is reputation management. So when we work, we monitor all the social channels and all the conversations, and we try to engage our advocates there, and we try to identify any negative conversations that gains magnitude. Because to your point, there's always a low-level hum of haters out there, and you can't address them. But if your current customers or your advocates or your audience raises their hand and says, hey, I don't think this is such a good thing, we listen for that, because if you're our existing customer, you're someone we care about, we need to know that. And finding those moments where you can continue to service your existing audience, that's really where I think people need to focus. That is to say, if I had a hot take to piggyback on your insight, which is in 2025, I almost would say stop worrying about new customers. Focus on your existing customers and what they need in terms of engagement. And maybe, you know what? I think to go along with what you said, let me back up a little bit. The Jaguar thing, addressing new customers, yes, I agree with that. And you must be bold and brave, but not at the expense of the relationships with your existing advocates.
Yeah, I mean, the best form of marketing is your existing customers.
Yeah.
You know, so if they can be your best advocates, you want more people like them buying your brand.
Yeah.
So you know, zero in on them, focus on them, make sure it's an undeniably different experience that they have, and that they rate it well, and then encourage that to spread.
All right. Final words of wisdom, Jim. What do you have for the audience? What do you want to leave the audience with?
Well, I think more than anything is to understand when rebranding works and why you would use it. It's meant to be really a strategic growth facilitator for an organization, to put a jetpack on you when you need it in terms of entering new markets, new products, new services, and so forth. But understand it means letting go of the trapeze and reaching out and grabbing the next one that's coming towards you. And that's a period of change. That's a period of anxiety. It's a period of letting go and jumping forward into the future. And it's an emotional roller coaster. There's no question, but it's the outcomes can be phenomenal for organizations. Let's watch and see what happens with Jaguar and if it drives their business.
All right. Jim, thank you so much for your wisdom and being on the podcast. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, great being with you.
CX is shaped where people live, work, and connect. Thank you for being a part of this journey. There's more to discover, more to challenge, and more to create. So stay curious, and we'll see you out there.